I'm Janice Hossteiger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to my weekly marketing. Several years ago, when I had a design agency, people would come to me for branding. What they often meant was that they wanted a logo designed. But what many people don't understand is that your logo is just the very tip of the branding iceberg. Your brand runs very deep. Branding is one of those nebulous things that people have a hard time defining. Seth Godin defines your brand as what people say about you when you're not in the room. I like to think about a brand as something your senses perceive that might not be obvious to you on a conscious level. Since the pandemic, though, we are seeing businesses in a new, more casual way. So today on the podcast, my guest is Amy Lokken, who is the owner and CEO of Modular. That's M-U-D with an umlaut over the U. She talks about branding, how she built her business, and how she was forced to completely pivot during the pandemic. She points out that during that time, we had to learn how to communicate our brand differently as we showed up on video calls in our spare bedrooms or wearing our jammy pants. And she teaches us how we can all curate the story we want to tell. For our listeners, Amy and I have been friends for many years, ever since we were young entrepreneurs. I think we first met in an entrepreneur group somewhere in Wisconsin somewhere. I don't even really remember where we first met.
I don't, but I do believe you are right. It had to have been something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you on the show. Amy, you create amazing trade show materials, and I've always been in awe of your ability to visualize something and create it, basically. And I love what you did. Your company is Modular. So you started out creating modular display systems, which I loved because you could just fold them right up and take them anywhere. And I even ordered one for my last business. So tell me a little bit about your background, how you got started in that, because I think it's quite an interesting story, if I remember right.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. And I think it is, but then again, it's my journey and story. So I'm not sure how interesting it is, but I have an industrial design degree background and actually went into that to be a theatrical set designer, which was what drew me into that. I ended up doing my thesis on furniture design and then found myself in the shopping center industry working for developers of shopping centers and doing retail design and visual merchandising. And I did that for 15 years. And the last 5 I was a contracted service. So that was my first official dip into entrepreneurship. And through those 5 years, I realized and witnessed and obviously leading up to that, a ton of waste in the visuals of marketing. And at the same time, nothing was ever really speaking directly to the audience at hand in front of them. And walking through a shopping center or a brick and mortar department store or anything is no different than literally walking through an exhibit hall or an event. So there's that connection with that. And I would literally sketch out this idea because I knew there had to be a better way. And I would literally hand my sketches of what now is Modular with all of its modular components to my clients and tenants. And I would have them say, go take this to your sign company, have them XYZ, and they would bring me back a flat piece of foam core that I knew wouldn't last and was not anywhere near the flexibility and versatility of what I was sketching for them. So that's actually the beginning of where Mood started. So at those 5 years, I was putting on probably 50,000 miles a year on my vehicle. So I had a lot of windshield time to keep on thinking of like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And how can somebody take what they've invested in and use it for multiple purposes? And that's really where the catalyst for Mood began. So when I did start to, put out my first prototypes and literally sell those first prototypes. It was helping people see beyond the initial use of them, where they were using them inside a shopping center. And then I would have that deep conversation and brainstorming session with them and say, so where else can you use this? Like, let's really get your bang for your buck out of this. And because everything's modular and it's magnetic graphics and different things like that, you can literally switch up your marketing message to speak directly to the audience that you're in front of, whether it's in the middle of a shopping center, at a trade show, or in your background while you're on a virtual interaction in the new modern day business world that we're in.
I mean, I'd love to talk to a little more about that too. But first, I want to say, because I spent my early years in retail marketing, and I love what you say about walking through a department store, because that was my every day, because I worked on the 11th floor and I'd walk through this Minneapolis department store every morning, and I'd just be pulled in by especially cosmetics and some of the visual merchandising that they had going on there. And I love that you picked up on that, because I don't think I did at the time, that those were all designed really to pull us all in and to make that purchase, of course. But I, you know, I find that really interesting, and how we can, as small business owners, use that information in everything we do in terms of branding and such. Um,
Absolutely. Well, it really does come down to our the human psychology, in all honesty. I with the industrial design degree, I also have that little bit of that industrial psychology, and I just have always been fascinated by the human psychology and how and why we react to things, and what separates that, and that really does play into our everyday lives.
It does. Yeah, for sure. We don't realize how much it does. I mean, there's so much involved in human psychology we don't even realize in terms of definitely marketing, but that's a topic for another podcast probably. But well, like so many of us, life changed for you, and you really had to pivot during the COVID-19 lockdown. Tell me about what happened at that point for you.
Yeah, I had actually just landed back in Minneapolis at the airport from a large conference that I was at as a strategic partner in Florida. And within 24 hours to 24 to 48 hours after re-landing back in Minnesota, I we were going on lockdown, and it was like, whoa, did I just enter Twilight Zone? And from that moment, everything, all the leads, all the interactions, all the relationships that had been built over the last few days at this conference were at best at a standstill, if a null and void at that point in time for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future. And the foreseeable future is pretty much what happened in that particular industry. And in the strategic partnership that I had with that organization at that time. So it was once again a pivoting, and maybe that's why I built a modular versatile system. Hindsight was, even though I'd always talked about utilizing them in videos and backgrounds and in different aspects, because I always wanted people to think beyond the initial use of things, and whether it was my product or any other product out there that they invested in as far as a visual marketing tool, to really think outside that box and use it in different ways. So fast forward to literally seeing everybody popping up in a very vulnerable state. We were asked to open up our comfort zones, aka our homes, literally to the world within a matter of hours.
Mhm.
And what happened there was really witnessing the uncomfortableness that people had with that, and thinking to myself, oh, but this could be such a an amazing breakthrough to really build deeper relationships with people across a camera lens. Here we are needing to still conduct business the best we could from our safe zone, our comfort zone, our homes. And even though people like you and I may have been, and a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners may be used to having a home office, we weren't necessarily, the great majority weren't turning on a camera and allowing them to see that behind the scenes. So it really came down to, well, it's time to, reinvent myself again and help people really see beyond what was really happening and how we could layer our backgrounds and literally curate the story we wanted to tell. And at the same time, try to be on brand and show a little bit more of our behind the scenes, but be credible at the same time, which is a lot to pack into that ball. And honestly, it took a while for me to even bring that forward because people just weren't there. They were at a very different space in just trying to just navigate the technology, let alone the psychology that is happening from what our audience views when we show up on screen. You and I both know first impressions are highly important. In fact, I think it was Princeton that recently did a study that obviously first impressions are made within, like, I think the first 7 seconds, where in all reality, the initial one is made in a tenth of a second.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I love what you have done. I mean, listening to this, you can't see Amy's screen right now, but that you have texture and you have images and you have a little cube where you're showing some of your awards that you've done, your design awards, and you're right. It makes a very, very professional looking background, and I would never know that you're sitting in your home right now.
Well,
Had you not told me.
yeah, and I think it's about, I have a whole presentation and a whole program that I do of lights, camera, and action. And, because that is the modern day business that we live in today. And we are telling a story visually when we pop up on somebody's screen, but it's no different than the story we used to tell when they would walk into our physical space, or we would walk into our client space, or we would meet in um, you know, a neutral location. All those environments would speak to our presence, like who we were, like, our presence is more than just us as a person. It's also within our surroundings. So how do we become the three-dimensional beings that we are and build those deeper relationships across the camera lens? We do that by adding layers and depth and texture, and you don't need a ton of space. I, from my camera lens to my back wall, is under 5 feet. But yet it appears as though it's a lot. I don't have a ton in my back, but it's very strategically placed, the items, and curated to what I do have. And it's done to allow the human eye, to move naturally through what they're seeing of me, but also allowing me to be the main subject, and that our conversation is not distracting. And
Right.
and that's why we need, I 100% believe that we need to remove the ego, because I'm not showing up for me. I'm showing up for you. I'm showing up for whoever's on the other end of that lens, and leading with that heart versus the ego, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now you make it sound too like you had been, like this was in the back of your mind. So when COVID happened, you just seamlessly moved right into it. Was that how it happened, or was there like because I would have thought that had I been in your shoes, I would have had this, sick feeling in the pit of my stomach at the time, which I'm guessing you may have had a little of, just considering you had to do some pivoting, but.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I don't think there was any of us that didn't have some type of a pit in our
right.
stomach
Yeah.
at that moment in time. But absolutely, because there was, I had always again thought of, but I have been doing virtuals, since Skype first
Right.
came out. So I've
Yeah.
always had that comfort because I had to
Hmm.
in order to reach certain clients because I had my you know properties in the shopping center were all over the country, and it was just the way to work on a design for that aspect. But so I always kind of had that understanding of what it but my superpower is also, spatial, visual spatial intelligence, I like to say.
Hmm.
I see things a little differently. But I would have to say the biggest hurdle in that is even though I knew how my product could benefit people in in helping them in that transition and to this virtual platform, regardless of if it was their home or a hotel room or an RV, for as far as that goes, it was having people realize that have them get through the initial shock of what was happening. Like we
Hmm.
needed, again, going back to opening up our homes, our comfort zones, a very personal side of us. And I used to take great pride in my personal and my professional life were two very separate things. Like they didn't collide. And 2020, you know, professional and life, personal collided pretty heavily for everyone. So that was probably the hardest part for me was to tiptoe over that very personal experience that people were having and helping them see that yes we are all real, but how do we blend that personal into our business life and still have security inside our safe zones, but also open up ourselves to allow our business world to see that we are all human.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And we talked a little bit last week when we chatted briefly about, that the branding and showing up as your authentic self, and and how it's also important to maintain a level of professionalism too, at least in most instances. Um, how do you feel like? How easy is it, do you think, that to walk that line? I mean, I feel like there are some people that are way more casual, and there are others that are way more professional. And how does that tie in with your brand, do you think?
I really think well, I think we have misused the word authentic, at least in my opinion, because being authentic isn't about, I don't care, I'm going to go to the grocery store in my pajama bottoms. You know, and if what I'm going to say triggers you, I want you to then sit kind of with that and take note of why that triggered you. But that's just being lazy. That's giving up on yourself. That is telling me you don't have a whole lot of self worth. We're not looking at the inside. Um, and I'm not saying that you need to, in a professional um, service or area that you may be in, that you need to be in a 3-piece suit or 4-inch heels and any of that. When it comes to your brand, it's an authenticity in an individual. It's about showing up as your best at that moment in time. And that best can and will look different, I believe, every day. But there are certain core values that we all hold, which translate into our brands as small business owners and entrepreneurs. Because without those, then there's a huge disconnect between us and the values and the cores of why we built that business, if that makes sense. So I believe that deciding who you are at your best And what really, because when we feel good about ourselves, we do better. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just given. When we feel not our greatest, we're not going to give our authentic 100% self. So I think I think it's going in to understanding what those core values are and being true. Like if you are somebody who loves wearing, like like when you feel most powerful is in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, then rock the heck out of that. But then that means you have to own that look. And your audience is going to see you as credible. If, you know, you like to be in 4-inch heels, and God bless you if you can still wear those after the last 4 years. Like I love them, but yeah, my feet don't like work so well in them anymore. But you know what? I have them in view beyond my camera lens because they do give me a little bit of that. Oh, I love that feeling of what it was like to be in those. You know, you stand a little taller, your legs always look better in heels and, all those kind of fun things. But in the core of it, it's owning who you are, and that's going to just come across. But you have to stand in that power. You have to stand in your weird, your style, your space, because that energy is what comes across. And that's when you are being most authentic. And that's how you connect it to your brand.
Oh, that's golden. I love that. I love that. That's so funny. I'm 5'10", so I've never been able to pull off heels. And plus I'm not really all that coordinated either. So I admire anybody that can wear 4-inch heels. I'm just gonna put that out there because I'm always in flats.
Hey,
um,
that's all right too.
and one thing I work with clients too, and talk about the layers of your brand, and you really have to go back to the core of your brand and say, all right, who am I really all about, and what are my core values? This is where we start. So why am I in business, and what is my why, basically, just attach your meanings to that core. You're right, and it kind of from there it goes outward. And I do have certain layers that I go through when I'm working with a client, but all the way out to the very end of it, which is like your logo and how you address customers, and for many of us now who are working from home, it is how you dress and how we come across in a meeting, a video meeting, and so on. So I
Absolutely.
love that.
And I think, for me, I walk my clients through kind of a similar process. And you and I do, like, I don't design logos, but I look at a person's logo and I work through that process of, so what is the essence that you were wanting from that? And so I really do work with them in a complementary way of what you do, and in the fact of, now let's really bring that essence, which is your core values, in
Hmm.
in how that translates through an experience with your audience and clients and customers. And it's understanding the psychographic versus the demographic, and how that relates to the business at hand, and what is that story that the essence, what is that feeling you want them to get from your brand.
Right, right. And I love you pulled in the emotional part of it because it definitely is part of it. And anything that you do to your business cards or whatever you have. So I think it's really important that you take the time and do that rather than letting somebody else do that, because absolutely people will define it for you, because we do that all the time. If you are going to a restaurant down the street, you're going to have an opinion about it when you walk in the door, based on the way the tables are arranged, their lighting, the cleanliness of it, um, the staff, whether you were greeted when you walked in, how long you had to wait. I mean, all of this ties into who your business is in the eyes of the customer, and that is what your brand is.
1000%. And a little tidbit just to add on that, and I loved how you were talking about that, but from a psychology standpoint, the first thing somebody notices when they initially walk into any place. Subconsciously is the floor.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that would make sense because, yeah, you're right. I love it.
Well, we have that tendency of looking down before we're looking up. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I love where you were going with that, because I think that's such a key component in understanding how to translate your brand across the lens, because it will be seen from a different perspective if you don't set the guidelines for that.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. So the name of the show is My Weekly Marketing. And one of the things I like to do is show entrepreneurs how to build their marketing in their weekly routines so that it's something that they're always kind of working on in the background. What could somebody do each week to stay on top of their personal brand and work it into their everyday life?
Well, especially in the modern day business world, and now really where, mood is coming from first and foremost, is really, that visual presence design of showing up online in videos, virtual interactions. One of the things that I encourage my customers and clients to do on a daily basis, or at least a weekly, is when they first pop up into their office and they start up their laptop or computer or whatever device they're on and conducting business on that day, I encourage them to take a screenshot. So open up your camera, open up your, Google, Zoom, whatever it is that you're using, and literally take a screenshot. And then I want you to actually either print it out or blow it up on your screen. So you are actually getting the perspective of what your audience is going to see on the other side of that screen. And then make those adjustments. Like, make sure that you are vertically taking up space, that you are the primary thing with inside that camera lens, that people can see you. If you wear glasses, which I often wear glasses while I'm on my computer, make sure that there isn't that huge reflecting glare in them. I mean, if we can't see each other's eyes, well, there is a barrier to trust. um, Make sure for the lighting that they can see you, camera angles, and make sure things are working and there's not huge distractions and things like that in the background that are going to, well, be distracting and not allow your audience to really see the unique value that you are bringing to the table for them. And that goes to, really not using those fake backgrounds. You look like a bad Photoshop job, and I'm just going to be honest with it. And you end up setting in the subconscious to your viewers that you're hiding something, because that's the first thing they're wondering. I wonder what
Mhm.
they're hiding behind that fake background. So honestly,
Yeah.
it's taking a screenshot and allowing yourself. It's like back in the day when we, had to go have pictures developed, like we couldn't see them instantaneously, and everybody's eyes are closed except for one person, or one person's eyes are closed and everybody else looks great, type of thing. Or why didn't somebody tell me there was spinach in my teeth? We're getting to see it from another perspective, and that's the perspective that somebody's going to make their ultimate decision based on.
That's really interesting. I should also mention that you did that for me last week when we were on a chat, and you kind of made me look at my office because I had my desk turned a different way, and now it's up against a wall with a little more pleasant looking background right now. But yeah, I had my own whiteboard back there, and then I work with clients on that whiteboard. So when I'm on a meeting with somebody else, I try to blur that out so that people, because there's proprietary information back there. People should not be able to see what I'm working on with other clients. So, never thought about that. But you're absolutely right. People do wonder, like, what is it that they've got that picture of the beach behind
Yeah,
them? What are they hiding behind there? So I love that.
absolutely. And I also think that allowing, once you have those clients, of course you can have the whiteboard back there, because it works in what you're utilizing it for with your client. But when you're first on that initial, it's like watching, the evening news. or any, television programming, there's a different set, quote unquote,
Yeah.
for each segment. So a lot, now that you have that, you're able to literally turn around and be in a different, frame of mind and a different set, and allow you as well to enter into a different, it's the Mr. Rogers, philosophy of coming home and either taking the sweater off or putting it on and going into a different work mode.
Right. Oh, I love that. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, I LinkedIn is actually a really great place. It's Amy Lokken, Lokken. I believe I have my Feedy in there as a my maiden name. But yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to connect. It's a great place to follow me with different marketing articles that I attempt to put out weekly. And yeah, just a great place to connect, and always
Love that.
DM or email as well.
Okay. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. And your company is Mood Modular. That's MU with umlauts, D, modular.com.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Which is
Yeah.
also a great place to meet me.
Yeah. So obviously there's no umlauts on our computers anyway, but so it's just MUDMODULAR.com. But anyway,
Correct.
we'll put that in the show notes as well. Amy, thank you so much for being with us today. This was such a great conversation. I love all you have to say about branding, and I love your backdrops. And I've always been a fan of your modular components for trade shows and whatnot. And I'm optimistic as I'm off to a show next week. I'm really optimistic that we're going to be back in meeting again in person, and but I don't think our Zoom calls are ever going to really end. So I think you maybe have just expanded your business. So
Yeah,
I hope you have.
absolutely. And they are both around to stay. Trade shows in person, there's just going to be a hybrid mix, I do believe. So
Yeah, I think so too.
absolutely. Well, thank you
Thank-
so much for having me on.
Thanks, Amy. This has been fun. Well, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Amy offers a free 20-minute evaluation where she'll assess your brand setup so that you'll be on brand for your video meetings. You can find the link to that in my show notes at myweeklymarketing.com/3. If you found this content helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd be so appreciative. Tune in next week where we'll learn some new social media tips that you probably have not heard about before. See you next time. Bye for now.